Welcome to the IDP Hunter podcast on the Fantasy Six Pack Network. I'm your host, IDP Hunter. You guys know me. I'm the number 4 IDP ranker of Fantasy Pros. I'm a writer over at the RPO Network in the Fantasy Six Pack and also over at the IDP Center. Tonight, we're going to take a little detour. We're going to talk a little bit about rookies. We're going to talk about offense. We're going to talk about defense. But we're going to take it a little bit different. We're going to talk about rookie. We're going to talk about the analytics. We're going to talk about what it takes to get these guys, draft them in your league, what kind of sources, what kind of tools, and where you could find it. I'm joined with Terry tonight. How you doing, Terry?
Good, Steve. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to talk to you. For those that don't know who Terry is the founder over at the Pro Football Rooke Analytics, also known as PFRA. It's an online resource. It's a magazine you can buy every year. I'm a big fan. We've been talking for years, Terry. I don't know if you noticed, I followed you on Facebook. We were having conversations even before I was in this industry. Right. But PFRA, it's a rookie data analytical company exclusively for stuff like this, looking at those rookies before they become, superstars in the NFL. And you got a solid track record, don't you, Terry?
Pretty solid, yeah, I think so. I mean, as you know, Steve, in Dynasty, you only recover through rookie drafts, and you blow those early picks, you're going to keep on picking early for a long time, and that's how I got going in this.
Heck yeah, you got to learn as you go. I tell my audience too. I've only been doing the industry for 2 years, but I've been following IDP since 2004. I've been playing, and that's the biggest. If you take an early IDP, you better hope that guy turns out into Nick Bosa, Aiden Hutchinson, or you're going to fail. What interested me about you, Terry, your company, you guys provide this for the industry. It's one of the most, if not the most, accurate rookie projection resource. You guys use a lot of algorithms on college production. Maybe what do you use? Draft capital measurements. How do you put all that in the secret sauce, if you will?
Yeah, so we have an algorithm that's unique for each position: 4 offense, 5 defense, and each one's a little different. It's basically a weighted average of their college production. And their draft capital, as well as their measurables, so athletic measurables, and size, which is part of that athletic component. So those 3 things are mashed together at different percentages of each based on the position. So, for example, athleticism, speed's crucial for those skill position players, but not quite as important for a defensive tackle. So those percentages in each algorithm are tailored to the position and what makes that position most successful and what correlates most to that success.
I was looking at your website, and for the audience that hasn't been on Pro Football Rooke Analytics, you're running a promo right now as well. The neat little promo you have here is Pro Football Rooke Analytics. For right now, you're doing, I guess you'd call it the early bird content. It's 20% off the early bird special. If they use promo code IDP Hunter, they'll save an additional 25%. So thank you for that. Thank you for that, Terry. Looking at your site, you got 2 books going. You got the offense, you got the IDP. And one little trivia note, I like little fun facts. I like your website because I can always scroll up and I can always see the kickoff to the football season. I'm really excited 42 days from now.
It's a really easy resource.
Oh, yeah. What I got to ask you, if somebody asked you hey, what is PFRA? What is Pro Football Rooke Analytics? How would you describe yourself, or how would you describe for an audience that has never looked at sites like yours?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with how it got going, which you've been playing fantasy for so long. I started back in 91. Back in the days when you would have to make a phone call or fax in your lineup and check the Monday morning paper to see how your players did Sunday. So I've done it for a while. But I always relied on those fantasy magazines where the experts told you who the best rookies were. And I love that content. I ate it up. Hard to find back then, but whenever I can find it, I bought all of it. And because, as I mentioned, those rookie picks are so important to your success. So back when I drafted T.J. Yeldon in 2016 as the 3rd overall pick, he was my next stud, right? And the guy was just a bust. As you know, as anyone who drafted him knew, watching him play in the NFL was kind of painful. He wasn't quick. He wasn't fast. He wasn't explosive. He wasn't anything, really, other than having a good college career with a really solid college that turns out pro running backs regularly in Alabama. So I bought into the hype that the experts gave me and drafted him. It's just a complete bust. So that's when I started thinking about, because in my career as an engineer, I was modeling different systems at the time. And I thought, you can model anything if you have the data and you have the right formulas, and using laws of physics, for example, because force equals mass times acceleration. So things like that, you start thinking about those in football terms and figure out why these players are successful. And you reverse engineer. I've reverse engineered. I took the best players, in the Hall of Fame, Pro Bowlers, and reverse engineered and looked at what were their measurables, which ones did they have in common that were above average, and started that way by looking at things like that. Oh, well, look, all the running backs who are really, really good, they're all pretty fast too. That's not surprising.
Yeah.
Like, is 4.55 enough? 4.52 is for Nick Chubb. That's fast enough for me. So, people sometimes overreact to 40 times and sometimes underreact. You have to know the sweet spot and know when a number is just too slow to invest in, and when a number maybe is too fast, when the other numbers don't add up and make the picture look attractive. So let me get a drink here. Sorry.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I was going to ask you, how you got started in the industry. You mentioned your background as an engineer. So is there a lot of parables from your former career to your new passion?
Yeah. I started building this formula a long time ago, starting with just simply fantasy points per touch. That was my very first metric I looked at on my own, calculating out, how much a college player would have scored in our system and per opportunity. And that correlated pretty well. It led to me picking up, players like Antonio Gates, who were free agents, but ended up being Pro Bowlers. So you start doing things like that. But then inevitably you find that the correlation isn't strong enough to bet the farm on. Maybe it's 65% or something low, but it's not accurate enough to really buy into all the way. So you have to start adding things to it to make it better, and look at things that correlate on their own really well to successful players and add those into your formula over time. And so that's how I added things like strength of schedule. I mean, it's great that players can have, 3 fantasy points per touch in college, but who'd they play? Are they playing the SEC schedule or a lesser schedule? And that really matters. So once you start getting their production in college on a level playing field, then add in their measurables, because again, there are minimums and thresholds you want. If a player is going to be the kind of player you can start on a regular basis and expect points from, all those things mash together over time. And every year I update these formulas based on another year's worth of data. So what worked and what didn't work. Whatever didn't work gets decreased, and what did work gets increased, and always improving the formula year over year. And the way I know I improved is because players who should have been scored higher did get scored higher, without losing players who were scored high who should have been high in the first place. So as long as you can get the good ones up and the bad ones down over time, I mean, I've got our tight end correlation now is at 100%. So that's for first round grades. So over since 2017, we've had 10 first round graded tight ends, and all 10 of them have had a season of at least 8 fantasy points per game. And so those kind of correlations.
Right.
Sorry?
That's money right there. That'll tell you something.
Yeah, it is. Now, that's in the current formula. So a couple of years ago, I had Jelani Woods as a first round grade. Now he's a high second, because over time, as I've added things like yards per route run to the formula, to the production side, things that correlate well on their own correlate well in a formula full of weighted averages. So that's basically what I'm doing and how I got going.
You mentioned the formula. Similarly to that, I actually wrote an article over at Fantasy Six Pack because I was looking at combine. I think we were tweeting in between this. I was looking at the combine. I'm like, what measurables at the combine pop? And the broad jump for running backs, holy cow. The 3-cone for defensive linemen, holy cow. Yeah. Speed drills, not for everybody, but I noticed linebackers, that's a big deal. Certain positions and so forth. It's not a kill for everything. So I'm a numbers junkie. So I totally respect what you're doing. I totally appreciate you doing this. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for explaining this. In regards to formulas, if you can share with the audience, and I know you have 2 books right now, Terry. You have the offense and defense. As far as offense and defense goes, what are some of the tools that you can use, or maybe some like for the practical audience, what tools would you do to combine that if you were measuring a rookie's value for potential peak performance?
What tools would I use outside of what I use? You mean?
Yeah. Like how would you validate this or verify? Like what do you guys use? You know?
Well, it's heavy on the combine measurables, as you know.
Okay.
And of course, that's the most important piece of our equation. If you look at the weighting, right? Mm-hmm. Athleticism is number one. It has to be, because all things being equal, you want the more athletic player, whether it's the faster player, the bigger player, hopefully the bigger, faster player who has some agility too. You start looking at the different components of what makes a football player good at what they do, and it's changed by position, but there are certain themes that they're true. Bigger, faster, stronger. It's real. Like on my website, one of my, I like to say, speed kills. Everyone says that, but size matters too. So you get them both together, get those 40 per weight ratios that are weight adjusted 40 times, those size adjusted things you get, those metrics, and they do matter. So athleticism, number one, depending on position. And then of course, college production is number two. And then third in that formula weighting is the draft capital. Now, some people might say you're using draft capital. That's what I use. So what's so special about that? Why? That's almost like cheating, like using the answer to the question. But if the answer was always right, we wouldn't have the question to question in the first place. So
right.
draft capital is used because we can measure the athleticism and get a number for that. We can quantify that. We can quantify college production till the cows come home. So many different metrics to use. But
and I know you said this earlier, you did, and I know I've been following you for a couple of years on Facebook and what have you, and I know you have the background in engineering. Were you doing this as an amateur for like how long were you doing this for until you finally got down the formula and you've been publishing the book? How many years total have you been involved in this?
Like I said, I started really probably 15 years ago, just with simple metrics. But 2017 was kind of the year that it all came together. That I thought that it was good enough to sell, but I hadn't gotten to that point yet where I had enough history to justify that. So 2021 is the first year that I opened the website and put my rankings up for download. But 2017, from that point on, the rankings got pretty good and my teams started winning rings. So I thought there's probably a correlation there. But to complete earlier thought, what I want to say was the reason why I use draft capital is there's so many things that we as fans are not privy to. We have no idea. We don't get to see the medical records. We don't get to see a psychological profile, the IQ test, for example, talking to the people and finding out why they love football, or do they love football? Is it just a job, or do they have passion for it? Those, what motivates them, those things we cannot see. We don't get to know that. So that's why the draft capital is part of that equation. It's for the unknowns.
Without giving away too much in your profiles and your website and your magazine here, I'm noticing you got a lot of profiles on here. You got so many. You got so many profiles. How many profiles do you think you have on here? I mean, I'm just scrolling through real brief, showing the audience. Yeah. But I mean, this is a loaded magazine here. You got, Terry.
Thank you. Yeah, the website is started out as just a storefront. I guess it kind of still is, but there's a lot of good free content, as you point out. So you keep scrolling down, you'll see an arrow to load more profiles if you want to see more. So right now for 2024, for this year's rookies, we're up to 24 profiles, which are free. So every year we give you a free profile of our number ones at every position. So that's number one, quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, defensive tackle, edge, linebacker, safety, and defensive back. Those are free. And then we start adding profiles for players that we maybe like a little more than their draft capital, or maybe a little less, or the players who are most popular. But in those free profiles, what you don't get are the relative ranking of that player within a position, and you don't get to see what the draft grade is. And to me, that's the most important part, is to know whether a player who is number one at their position is also a first-round grade. Or are they a third-round grade? Maybe you wait 2 rounds before you draft that position, or trade back from your first if that's the position you want to get. So it's those kind of things that, to me, make this approach fun when you start working it into actual rookie drafts. And because I'm an investor in stocks as well, and I'm a value investor, and to me, fantasy football is just the correlation is so spot on for value investing in rookies. And that's how I look at it. Same way, looking for those players who aren't as valuable now as they will be later.
I look at stuff like this is like the PFF to rookies to me. I just can't. I eat it up. I love it. I'm looking at certain profiles, and to me, just as a amateur, I guess, student of the game, scouting, this class is loaded at defensive linemen. It's loaded. There's key positions. It's kind of hard to distinguish the two without tipping the hand or revealing too much in your magazine. You have some clear-cut winners, don't you? You have a couple players that stand out, which is exciting.
Yeah. So, this year, unfortunately, is not a great year for linebackers again, as you know.
Right.
Not a single one drafted in the first round, if memory serves. I think Cooper from Green Bay was the first one to go in the second round. Cooper from Green Bay is our linebacker too. But our linebacker one is Payton Wilson out of NC State. And that may sound crazy considering he was a third-round pick, but the guy was uber productive. I mean, he led the class, and let's see here. Fantasy points per snap. This is a new metric for us. We used to just use points per game for IDP up to this year. And this year, it's obviously more accurate when you can compare apples to apples. And so one player might get 20 snaps a game, one might get 60. So using points per game isn't fair to the players getting fewer snaps. So points per snap, points per opportunity. That's how all of our positions are done. And by the way, the algorithms are the same. It's points per opportunity. His points per game and points per snap are so much better than everybody else. It's ridiculous. The guy, 17.5 tackles for loss this past season. As a linebacker, 6 sacks, 3 interceptions, 6 PDs. He's playing the pass. He's playing the run. He's sacking the quarterback. He does it all. But, of course, his Achilles heel is exactly that. His Achilles heel is his health. The guy cannot stay healthy. Just horrible luck. Multiple knee surgeries. Up to, I think, 10 surgeries he's had so far in his career. So will he stay healthy? Probably not. But if he falls to you in the second, third round as a first-round talent, and you don't mind playing him maybe half the year and get that first-round production, he's worth going for. And who knows, maybe actually finally over the injury bug. But the Steelers need the help, and he is super talented.
So, and I was going to ask you. So you're high on Wilson as well?
Yes, sir.
Is there anybody on the metrics that? Again, I don't want to reveal too much of this magazine because it's such a neat magazine the way you do this. But is there is there certain players that would stand out ahead of the group based on your findings and your metrics that you're really excited about? You said Wilson, but is there anybody else out there that you were thinking?
Yeah, Wilson's the first one that comes to mind. He probably he's got 2 rounds of draft value there, being a third-round pick and a first-round grade, so +2 there. That's good. I think, well, who I like a lot is that guy, that defensive lineman from Florida State, who's a ramp stick in the second round. You just had him up, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I pulled him back. I thought you were going to talk about him because I was impressed by your writing. I like me some Braden Fiske. I really like him. You guys have him high as DL1. I was like, wow. The only site that I know that's doing that.
Yeah. So he's the only DL in this class who scored both first-round athleticism for the position and first-round production. The other first-round grades we have, Byron Murphy and Rooke down in Atlanta, they both have first-round athleticism but didn't produce at the same level as our first-round bar for defensive linemen. So, yeah, Fiske checks both boxes. The guy, he's an animal, man. He runs a 4.37 shuttle, which led the class, so super agile. He's strong too, 26 reps on the bench, so he can bull rush you, he can speed rush you, he can spin move you, whatever you need, he's going to do it. And he's got a huge opening, huge shoes to fill in LA defensive line with a recent retirement of Hall of Famer. But I think he's up to the challenge. He's probably not going to be reliable, consistent this first season, but he's going to play. And we'll see real soon how good he's going to be. So I like Fiske a lot. I like Wilson a lot. Those are the 2 guys that come to mind when I look about guys who I've got as number 1 at their position and who were drafted, maybe 4, 5, 6 at their position.
And you know what I like about your analytics your thorough, your logic on this. For me, and I'm a ranker, and I was the number 4 ranker last year, not to toot my own horn, but this is kind of like a blessing and a curse, right? I think I was number 2 with linebackers, number 3 with defensive linemen. I might have it backwards, but I was the number 10 defensive back ranker. So this whole offseason, that was killing me. I'm like, if I can just get those guys figured out. It's like, I hate defensive backs, Terry. It's like throwing a dart. It's like a dart throw because you don't know who's up, who's down. It's so volatile. You don't know the offensive. I hate defensive backs. Looking at rookies, I do, everyone knew Newbin stood out. And, we didn't know how the landing spots were going to fall. The landing spots ended up being excellent. I love what you did for these defensive back profiles. And for the audience that's on Spotify that can't see my screen, I was just showing some of the profiles. The audience on YouTube's in for a treat. The iHeartRadio audience and the Apple, you're just going to have to trust me on this. You're going to have to pick up Terry's content over here at Pro Football Rookie Analytics and do it now. This is the early bird special, right, Terry? 20% off early bird special. You get an extra 25% off if you type in promo code IDP Hunter. How long is this going, Terry? What would be an early bird? Right before Labor Day? Like when does this expire?
August 1st.
August 1st. So you got to get in while you can, audience.
Yeah, a week.
Get in while you can. But I was shocked by some of these. I mean, you're giving away some of it for free. You got a lot of number 1s on here for free, right, Terry?
That's correct. All number 1s are free. So you can read a player's profile. And if you like the way I'm looking at it and you want to see more, you want to know relative rankings and draft round grades, then you've got the magazines you can download. But sign up for our blog. It's free. You'll get an email every time that we put a player profile on for free.
Interesting.
Link to it and check it out so you can get them real-time notification that I've added a new profile. And we also take recommendations at Facebook, which is Pro Football Rooke Analytics is the username on Facebook. And then for Twitter, it's PFR Analytics. Those locations are where I announce things. But you can sign up for our blog from our website, profootballrookieanalytics.com, and get our free blog notifications there. But yeah, so lots of player profiles. It's a fun part of the job, really. It's not the data for me is fun because I'm an engineer, but then taking that data and we're laying it into words that people can relate, can understand and see how the two are connected. Because when I watch a highlight, I don't watch it like a grader. I watch it like that's where that 10-yard split comes in handy, right through that offensive and defensive line. Or that's where the agility comes in. Speaking of agility, before I forget, I wanted to share something that I've recently realized that I thought was pretty cool. So Sean McVay likes day 3 running backs a lot. And I noticed something recently about what he likes about them, and I thought this was worth sharing. So this year, he drafted Blake Corum, right? Now, he was a day 2 back, 3rd round pick, but pretty close. But I noticed that, Blake Corum, because none of his backs he drafts have great 40 times. I think Cam Akers made the exception. But they all have great agility times, Steve. So Blake Corum's 3-cone drill time was 6.82, which was the 3rd best in class. But wait, there's more. So last year, they drafted Zach Evans in the 5th round, you may recall. Zach Evans had a 6.89 cone time, 1st in class. 2022, the Rams take Kyron Williams in the 5th round. Kyron Williams ran a 6.94 cone time, 1st in class. 2021, Jake Funk in the 7th round. Jake Funk ran a 6.71 cone time, 1st in class. You may see a pattern here, Steve.
You may have a type he likes, right?
You may have a type for sure. And then what was funny was, this failure really for him was Darrell Henderson. Mine as well, by the way. I had him ranked pretty high. But Darrell Henderson didn't meet that profile. He had a 7.03 cone. So it wasn't sub 7. It wasn't top 5 in the class. And then he also had a very slow 4.41 shuttle time. That's low for RBs. So he's not moving his feet fast enough. He killed in Memphis. I mean, points per touch were off the charts, but he couldn't translate to the NFL because everyone got bigger, faster, stronger. And he didn't have the agility and the quickness to elude them.
You know what, Terry? Don't cut yourself short because we all hit and we all miss. Me doing IDP rankings, I'm not as analytical as you, and you've been playing a little bit longer than me. I remember the notepads, the newspaper articles, right? But like IDP ranking, you're like a fisherman. You're like, okay, like I had last year, I had it all mapped out. This guy here is going up. I think it was the Saints. He's going up against, the worst linemen and, PFF data, and this is going to be a shoe. Like I'm a fisherman. Here's my bait. Here's my plot. So I'm going. And then it all changed in the game. You know what they did? They switched the tackles, and he didn't get that. And I'm like, dang. So
they saw what you saw.
What's that?
They saw what you saw.
Yeah, it's like you can do all the data, you can have all the metrics. You're going to miss one or two, but at least with you having a consistent pattern for all these years, you're going to put us on the right track. We hit some, we win some, but there's always a Johnny Manziel out there that's going to just ruin our metrics. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like I like to say to my my customers is not all the first round talent or not all the best fantasy players are going to be first round grades in my algorithm, but all the first round grades are going to be fantasy talent. So meaning I'm not going to get them all right, but the ones I get the first round grades are going to be right. Basically, you can trust these guys the most. I think my worst correlation is around 75% for first round scores, and that sounds low, but when you compare it to the positional for the NFL, they're at 65 for that position. I think it's receiver. So it's all relative. Positions like receivers, I mean, there are as many hits as misses in the first round. It seems like, these days. Jameson Williams may change that for me, but I had him ranked pretty high 2 years ago. He's supposed to break out again this year. We'll see. But
that keep hearing it.
Like you say, I mean, I wouldn't be doing this if there weren't a lot of misses to begin with. I'm just trying to minimize my misses and maximize my hits. That's all it's about.
I like to run a skeleton crew on IDP because a lot of it is volume production. If my guys are doing 3 downs and your guys only get 1, so I have triple the chance to beat you. So I like to spend a lot of premium on those top rookies. We had a great wide receiver rookie class that just popped out. That just happened. Is there anybody in there, maybe not as an analytical perspective, let's talk about a fantasy football perspective. Is there anybody in there, like you got a 110, but you got a late first round? Is there anybody you're looking at? Because, it was Brian Tracy earlier this offseason. Oh, I never put this down. I'm a degenerate, Cherry. I stay all year. When the Super Bowl starts, I start getting into rookies, blowing up chats. I know like Brian Tracy was a guy. And then Kean Coleman's a guy. Lad Mconkey I'm interested in. I like what you wrote up here. There's a bunch of guys, but was there anybody that you were looking at yourself and you're like, I want him on my team. I want him on my squad?
Absolutely. So the guy who I like the most relative as far as his draft round versus my draft grade, we got +2 rounds of value here. 3rd rounder, Jermaine Burton.
Yeah.
Love everything about him, except for his off-the-field issues. But that's why he was a 3rd round pick, right? So you take a gamble, and when he's available in your 2nd round of your rookie draft, you take him because he's a first-round talent. He, to me, is Terry McLaurin 2.0. He and McLaurin both were overlooked in college. They had less than 40 receptions their final year. But look at their fantasy points per touch. And they both led their class. They're both fast. They're both 6 feet tall. They have some muscle to them. I mean, the quick, the athleticism, so I love Burton a lot. I think he falls in a great situation with Joe Burrow. He's got his quarterback long term. Cincinnati finally is realizing how important it is to protect Joe Burrow. So he'll have an offensive line to protect him. You're going to throw a lot. They're not going to have the running game they had with Mixon, which is probably a good thing because Mixon to me was average. But they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. And Burton as the replacement for I'm losing the guy's name right now. The Bengals WR3 who went and signed with is it Carolina?
Oh, Boyd.
Boyd. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. I had it on the tip of my tongue. Boyd. Yeah, Boyd went over to the Titans. Maybe another wide receiver 3. Who's his?
Yeah, right. And Boyd's problem has always been his hands. So now they fixed that because guess how many drops Burton had last year in college? 0. So. Wow. And this is also, I'm glad you asked this question because I can dovetail a little bit here. But so Burton led the class in fantasy points per catchable target. Now, what does that mean? Because people like a lot yards per route run. I do too. It's a good correlating metric. But what it accounts for also is an inaccurate quarterback. So if you're doing yards per route run, your quarterback keeps missing you, that goes against you. But if it's yards per catchable target, then you're only counting the balls that the receiver could have got to in the first place. So what that does, it incorporates the drops into the metric. So you're including how good their hands are, how often they drop the ball into your production. And so Burton, 0 drops.
You know what I like to, and I wanted to, there's so many details in here. There's so many oodles and noodles in the sauce and the recipe. Like even in your writings, you have the hit rates. A 3rd round wide receiver has a 26% hit rate. You know, there's just stuff in here. There's so much research in here. And this, I just wanted to take a minute to praise someone else. For the audience on Spotify that can't see my screen, for the audience on YouTube that can, you're in for a treat. Like I said, iHeartRadio and Apple welcome in. There's a gentleman named Kent Lee, and I talked to him online. It's Platte. I don't know if that's Platte or Platte, but he does the RAS scores. He does the art. You have a lot of those in here too. So he deserves all the praise, the love, the respect, anything we can give him too, because he's out here plugging away. A lot of his information's free out there. So for my audience, please check out Ken Lee. I'm going with Platte. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm right. I mean, Platte. Check him out. Check out Terry's work. Terry, where can the audience at home find you?
And to piggyback your comments on RAS, that's relative athletic score, www.rass.com. And that's the data I use for all my measurables, because it's consistent. You can't have consistent data. You can't just cherry pick, oh, this website says this guy's faster here, this guy's slower here. It's got to be consistent. And Ken does a great job of carrying all of the official times, whether they're combine or pro day. Once he'll also put draft times in, which is I appreciate as I'm modeling for the year with the rookies team where they start stacking up. But once they go official, that's what it is, and that's what I use. So we're consistent there. But as far as where you can find the website is profootballrookieanalytics.com. The Facebook username is the same. On Twitter, it's PFRA Analytics. And so you can find me in those 3 places, but the website's where the Twitter and the Facebook are really just to communicate with people like yourself, engage other fantasy nuts like myself, and get ideas, share information, and then it all culminates in the annual publishing of our digital magazine.
Right, that's where we met each other, on Twitter. I mean, this is the fantasy football universe is such an amazing place. You just meet people and talk ball all the time. Data like this is loved and appreciated. I'm a numbers junkie myself. Obviously, I live in the IDP world. You know, you kind of have to be. Are you working on anything right now? I know you're playing fantasy exclusively. I know this is your bread and butter. Is there anything in particular you're doing right now?
Not right now. It's actually the slow time of year, other than adding profiles. So we do, like I said, we take requests. If you want to read about a rookie that isn't on my website yet, just drop me a note on Facebook or Twitter or Gmail, profootballrookieanalytics@gmail.com. And I'm happy to do that. So those are fun for me because I analyze in our rankings every single rookie who's drafted is in there. On offense, I also include every combine player. IDP, not so much because of the timing of it all. So maybe someday. But as far as working on things, always working on the algorithms and improving them. Every time I open up one of my spreadsheets, I can't help but start looking at data and going, oh, I wonder if this should be 1% higher and that 1% less. And I start playing. An hour later, I'm down a rabbit hole, and I forgot what I was doing and why I was there in the first place. So
that's that engineering, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. Because the problem is, it's that old saying, you know, if you always get halfway your destination, you're never going to reach it. And I'm never going to reach it either, probably. But I know it can always be better. So you're always looking. I mean, perfection's the goal, but if that's not your goal, you'll never get close to it. And so I'm always looking to improve, adding new metrics. Like this year, just for receiver alone, I added yards per route run. What else? Drop rate and contested catch rate. 3 brand new metrics as part of the college production side. So always looking for those metrics that correlate well on their own that I can incorporate into my algorithms as well. And that's kind of a year-round job. But once I'm published, I do get to take a breath and just enjoy, I guess, kind of the preseason, off-season for me. How about you?
Preseason is where I kick it off, and I'm like, okay, this guy here, he likes to do this. I like to go skiing. That's why I was asking. But I thoroughly enjoy your content, and I'm so happy that you came on the show. We're able to kind of put this out, especially on IDP, because there's not a lot of content. Well, I'll put it like this. There's not a lot of credible content that I'd be like, oh, I see how that translates and stuff. So you're appreciated, especially in the IDP community.
Oh, thank you. And I got IDP, and you may have been one of them who urged me, because there were some of my offensive clients going, do you do IDP? And I said, no, I don't. And I get the question again and a couple more. And I'm like, maybe I should look into IDP. So I started doing IDP just 2 years ago. This is our third season of publishing those. But yeah, it's been evolution like fantasy has been since I've ever known about it. And I keep on evolving, and we'll keep on hopefully evolving with it. But yeah, it's a newer thing for me too.
You might enjoy this. I met a bunch of guys off of Reddit, of all places. People are like afraid to post on Reddit. There's a Reddit Discord, and it became its own entity. It's called the IDPcenter.com. They have over 400 managers now. The guy runs his own website. I've had him on the show a couple times. He has trade charts, trade calculators for different kinds of leagues, tackle, sack. Because I don't know how it is for you, but like Justin Jefferson should not be the same as TJ Watt, or like in another league, I see a trade calculator, Justin Jefferson's equivalent to Devin Singletary. I'm like, how do you get, TJ Watt, TJ Watt, yeah. Justin Singletary. I'm like, how do you get that player from this player? It just makes no sense. So he kind of got his own formula figured out. It's a great community. I go over there, I play a lot of best balls, talk a little smack, because these guys are usually younger than me. There are a lot of guys from Germany, Australia in there. So I go in there and we'll be posting this content over there as well. But yeah, please, anybody in the audience at home that's looking at IDP, go to IDPcenter.com. Over 400 managers, trade calculators, trade charts, best ball leagues, free leagues, dynasty leagues. There's money leagues, something for everybody. And then, of course, what we talked about tonight, the Pro Football Rookie Analytics. I mean, I don't know what you're waiting for. You can't beat it. There's a promo code right now. 20% off, early bird special. It's already discounted. Go ahead and put my name in there, IDP Hunter. Use the promo, get an additional 25% off. I mean, what more do they want? I don't know what they're waiting for, Terry. It's right there for them.
Agreed, Steve. Thank you so much.
Until August 1st. So that's all I have this podcast. Anything else, Terry? Any words of wisdom? Any closing thoughts?
Well, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to come back on and cover anything else you want to cover, especially if any of your listeners have questions or the follow-up forum. I can do that too. You can go to any of the media that I mentioned, Facebook or Twitter or email or a website and post questions. So happy to answer any questions. I'm sure there's some out there, because I tend to ramble and speak quickly and talk in terms that maybe others aren't familiar with. So
that's what football is. We ramble. I'm going to hold you to that, though. I'd love to have you back on. We'll jam out. We'll see how some of these do, and maybe we'll have other models to talk about. But yeah, I'd definitely love to have you back on. I tell people this all the time. This is a bigger audience out there. Oh, before we forget to, check the blog out. Go ahead and sign up for his blog. I mean, they're free profiles. Why not? Your email. But I tell people all the time, they keep listening. We'll keep putting this kind of content out. And that's what makes this universe so fun. There's something for everybody,
Absolutely. Steve, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, really.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. All right, audience. We'll see you next week. Take care.